Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I have my seagull sweatshirt on this week in honor of all the birds that are coming in my sketchbooks. This week's mostly a sketchbook tour. I haven't finished my big painting yet, which I told you was going to come in a part 2, and it will. It's at a middle spot now that it's more interesting to film from, if that makes sense. So there's some things that I need to fix that I'll be able to do on camera and kind of take you through the rest of it. But this week I want to go through a little bit of a sketchbook tour and talk about what I've been doing, because lately I have been painting mostly repeats from things. So I got a new sketchbook and I tried that out, and I'm going to show that to you. And I painted a couple new things, but most of it, like I said, is an iteration, and I encourage all of you to do this if you can, because once you've done something once, even if it's not great, even if the composition's not great, you've already taken, especially if this is a landscape or something realistic, you've already taken 99% of the information out of the equation. You've already done the hard part. The hardest part of painting anything is simplifying it. And even if the way you've simplified it isn't how you want it to be, that's an easier fix on the next go round, and just to try it a different way. It's a lot of mental effort to get the first iteration down, but mostly all the iterations that come after that are just opportunities to play, opportunities to try it a different way, to take risks, because the more versions I have, the more willing I am to take risks, because I already know I've done a few things that I've liked before, so it's okay if this one doesn't turn out. And honestly, the best pieces of art usually have something a little bit risky in it, whether it was a color choice or a brush stroke or a weird mark that you made with something new, and maybe it's in a spot you never would have put it in, you know, or it's a shape you never would have made before. Those things really breathe life into your art, and the more iterations you do of something, it's just that you have the more opportunities to take risks like that and breathe life into those pieces. So I'm going to take you through what I did over the past couple of weeks and show you some things I did from our vacation in Maine, but also show you some repeat iterations of things I've done from our local landscape here. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the first sketchbook I used is a new one that I got from Stillman & Byrne. I haven't tried these before. I've gotten one with the cream pages, but they had a real papery surface to them, and I wanted something that had really smooth paper, and I wanted to try white paper. So I got this. It's the Epsilon series, and I got this to use like with my gouache and watercolors and stuff. First pages, I just came in and did some color swatching with my gouache and watercolor palette. This is a house that's down in the village center, and in the summertime in front of the fence it gets all these beautiful flowers, but right now, since it's fall, those are all gone. I just wanted to throw something cute on the first page, and I'm happy with how this turned out. I like all the little birds and the sun, and I like the fence coming down here in a curve. It just makes it a neat little composition. And I think this is one I'll probably repaint on a small canvas too. So this is Onset Bay down the street from our house. I get to drive by this every morning when I go get a coffee. Seagulls congregate on the beach here. It's super adorable. There's tons of them. There's probably at least 100 of them. And they all sit here and face the sun as it's coming up. This is one of my favorite things to see every day, so I thought I would paint this. This is just with my gouache and watercolors. And these are just some of the buildings that are down there, but aren't all of them. I left out some of the houses just to simplify the scene, which, you know, as artists, we get to do stuff like that. There might be a time where I put them in, but for now, I just wanted something I could paint that was simple and enjoyable without adding too much to it. So this is the Harbor Masters building with the little dock right here. This is a restaurant and the little parking booth. I love this. It's super adorable. And this is the community center that has like kayaks and sailing and stuff. One of the things that I ended up loving from this was the first time I had used the colors that I had put in this palette. I had pulled out some old watercolors looking for a super dark green and discovered this in there. Let me just pull it out so I can tell you what it is. Pretty sure it's this Paraline green from Daniel Smith. Yeah. Just grab a little water. And it's just this perfect forest green that it's great for darkening colors too if you don't want to use black. Also, this brush, by the way, is super awesome. This is a Princeton Velvet Touch. It's a 1/8 inch mop brush. So it's super tiny, but it's good for like if you want to sketch something in, if you want to like sketch a bird, you can sketch loose with it, and it holds a good amount of water too. So if you want to use it for gouache or watercolor or make marks, it's a super nice brush. I like dry brushing with it to draw though, and just create these sort of scratchy marks. So after that, I wanted to paint from scenes in Maine. Right now, I'm just going through old pictures, grabbing the first thing that catches my eye, not thinking about it too much, not trying to think about, you know, like what's the most perfect thing I can paint. I just want to get out of that headspace and grab something and just get moving. We went to Bar Harbor over the summer and took the kids. If you haven't been, they have the most adorable village of just shops and ice cream shops and restaurants, and it's just, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's just really, really adorable and picturesque. This was from one of my photos of some of those shops in a row, and I liked this one because it had, this is actually pink, I think, in real life, but the signs are adorable and they just had a lot of cute stuff to add in there, and I thought it would be fun to do on white paper. And so this is mostly gouache and watercolor, but there's some neocolor in here in a few places. But these are like little lobster claws that are sticking off the front of the restaurant and the little whale sign, and I really enjoyed doing this one. This one was from a Patreon, and I can't remember the artist's name, but they put the photo up and it was like a Zoom drawing session for spooky type houses. I do like how this came out. It's a little fussier and not as loose as I would want it to be. It's got like a little too much detail in it for me, but I do like it, and I ended up doing another painting from it that I'll show you in the sketchbook. But I like the smoky purple sky, and I like the clouds coming through here. I don't usually use purple at all in anything, but occasionally like a grayed out purple like these I'll pop in there. And this is all gouache and watercolor with a little bit of neocolor coming in here, and these trees back here are just loosely sketched in with neocolor and some scraggly branches. Overall, I'm happy with how it turned out. It's just this isn't how I want to be painting on a regular basis. And that is it for that one. And then in this one, I decided to paint that onset bay scene again, but using different paints. And you can see how just using different paints can completely change the scene. So this is on that cream colored paper. It's using acrylic paint. I don't think, yeah, there's nothing else besides acrylic paint on this one. And here is the other one. It's the same scene, but in many ways they look like totally different pieces. My approach to the water was different. Wanted something more curvy and an interesting shape rather than this big disc shape. But I kept a lot of the stuff. I like the marks in the beach from the tide going out, so I kept those here. And the fence and the buildings are all pretty much the same. I did change the boat though. Not really happy with either of the boats, but I wanted a pop of color back here just to see what would happen, so it's fine. I do like the little seagulls in this one a little bit more than I do in here, and I think it's just easier to layer with paint and get those loose blobby type things that I like. So I was really happy with how this turned out, and this is pretty close to how I want to be painting. It's nice and loose. I think if I were to do this again, I'd want to come in with pencil and just put all those houses back in that I had taken out. So that's what I'm going to try next time I do this scene. So after this, I decided to do the whole thing in just dry materials. So this is all just marker and pencil and neocolor. I just wanted to see what it would look like if I didn't use any paint at all and I was limited to a certain amount of materials. So I loaded up my Sendak roll, and for a couple reasons, I do want to take this with me more to be painting and drawing and all those things outside of the house so that I can be taking in sources from the original landscape rather than photos so much. The other thing was, even when I'm here in my studio, it forces me to limit my supplies, and this is about as limited as I can go. I know those people do 3 material drawing challenges, and I do want to do some sketches and things like that in that way. It is so hard to limit myself though, but this is pretty limited. It's got some neocolor 2s in here and just a variety of colored pencils that are red through blue and some neutrals back here, and everything else in there is pretty much, I think there's 2 eco lines in a light blue and a buff color, and then just the Faber-Castell watercolor markers. And so that's what I was limited to when I did this, and I'm happy with how it came out. I like how loose it is. I like how light it is compared to the other ones, and just it feels really free and it feels different from the other 2. And what I really enjoyed about this is redoing the scene but pushing it in a direction I didn't push it the other time, so that it's not boring. Because what happens is once you get to know a scene, you feel more comfortable playing with it and trying different things, because you know you've already left out 99% of the information. You've already filtered everything out. So doing it again, you already did the hard part. Once you've done it once and then you pull from that, you're pulling from a very simplified version of what this looks like in real life, and it's so much easier to just grab a few things and scribble and make some marks and pull something together and just play with colors, play with marks. I love the seagulls in here. I wanted to try, again, something different. Back here, these are just painted, layered in, how I'd usually paint a seagull. But over here, I just wanted to take my pencil and do one continuous contour line to get the bird in, really loose. And I'm really happy with how they came out. It's something I'll probably continue doing. And these are all the marks in the beach again. I really like the variety of color. When I do another painting, I will probably pull the colors that I'll try from this rather than from the painting itself. The only part that might make that tricky is the water, because it was left open here, but that's fine because I'll figure that part out when I get there. This was just practicing some loose seagulls. I think I only had a few minutes. I think I had to go pick up my kids or something like that. Pulled out my gouache and some neocolors, and I just wanted to get some loose seagulls in and just sort of practice painting them, so that when I go to paint a seagull in a painting, my hand has done it more times, so it's easier for me to just throw these things into a painting without really thinking about it. And the reason I want to be able to do that is it makes it so that it's easier to be loose with it, because my hand already knows that motion. And so down here I was just practicing with different seagull shapes again. This is neocolor, and I was just practicing again those contour lines with the seagulls like in the drawing. I did this with a marker. I wasn't as happy with how this turned out as I was with these, but you know, you gotta try things to see what you're gonna like. And some little boats in there. This same thing as the seagulls. I just wanted to paint some boats to come up with some different ways to put boats into a painting, different color combinations, different marks. This is all gouache and watercolor and some Daniel Smith watercolor stick to make some marks in here. I was happy with how these turned out too. And again, this stuff just builds my vocabulary. So when I want to put a boat into something, it's very easy for me to put it in either from memory or to look at one of these and go, oh, you know, this is the one that would look great in the painting that I'm doing right now. Why don't I go ahead and just throw that in? So this was a redo of that one that I felt was too tight in my other sketchbook. Pull that open. So there's things I like about this one better, and there's things I like about this one better. I simplified this scene more in here, and I added some sheep. I do like how these trees are in the background. They're thin yet chunky and have some weight and some interest to them at the same time. I'm not as happy with the front of the house in a way. I do like the more simplified shapes than I do over here. Like all the fussiness with the bricks just isn't me. It's tedious. I didn't find it fun to do, so I don't think that's how I would do it again. I think I would do bigger, chunkier ones to just suggest them rather than put them in. The other thing I would do differently next time is I would either make these really small, because that's actually how they are. They're supposed to be small up here, or I would lighten them up. And the reason for that, especially when you have just two windows like this, they look like eyes staring at you if they're too dark. And it is supposed to be spooky, but that's a little too spooky. So where this one was gouache and watercolor mostly, this one was paint. So that's one major difference. And then the other difference was I used more neocolor in here and colored pencil to do some mark making. I do like this really saturated pop of green down here though. I feel like it makes the composition a little more interesting. This was more seagull practice. I love his face. He looks mad. I thought about fixing it at first when I was making it, and I was like, no, absolutely not. He's fantastic. So this is probably one of my favorite seagulls that I've ever done. I'm really happy with his face. I think this is the last one in here. This is the one I did today. This is a photo. If you're walking towards the end of my road, toward the main road, this is what the view looks like. One day I was walking my daughter to the bus and tons and tons and tons and tons of blackbirds were hanging out. I don't know if they were migrating or what they were doing, but it was literally just hundreds of birds coming through. And so I snapped a few pictures as we were walking to the end of the road, and I'd actually forgotten about it, but I was looking for something to paint today and I'm flipping through my photo roll. I saw one, it piqued my interest, and so I thought I'm just gonna paint that, and I was really happy with it. I love the little railroad sign that we have at the end of the road. That was really fun to put in, and the little birds and the fire hydrant. I was happy overall with how this turned out. It is a simplification of the scene. There's more trees and things like that, and there's some wires coming down over here. But when you're doing a painting, you get to leave the stuff out that doesn't help you tell the story. It doesn't need to be an exact replica of the scene all the time, you know what I mean? This was really fun to do, and I'm gonna actually pull out a canvas, I think later today, a small one, and do a canvas version of this. I'm not sure yet what I'll change. I might make this tree a little bit bigger, but other than that, I think it'll be pretty much the same. And so the only other thing I really did this week was this painting, and this I've shown you guys I think a couple times now. This was one I did months ago, and I've painted from it a few times since. This was one of those paintings where same thing, I had already painted a couple of versions of it before, and then I painted this one, changed it. It changes and evolves every single time I paint it. So I pulled out one of my really smooth canvases, and I just wanted to take this but simplify it even further. There's a lot of things I like about this, but I really just wanted to get in there and make some really simplified loose marks with my brush. Almost a primary palette. There's green in here obviously, but it's really the red, blue, and yellow that kind of hang the whole thing together, and there's some contrast down here, but it really does nicely pull your eye around in a very simplified way. I was really happy with how this turned out. I don't know if I'll paint this scene again. I might get the itch. I'm very happy with this version, so I don't know that I will. I think it'll live up on my wall for a while, and we'll see. So I hope that was all really helpful for you, and I probably should have mentioned this in the beginning of the video, but if you haven't signed up for my newsletter and you would like some words of inspiration to your inbox every Sunday, go ahead and sign up for that. I say every Sunday, it's a little more like every other week, because it takes me about 2 weeks to finally have something to say and put in there. But go ahead and sign up for that. It'll also kind of give you reminders. So if you're not on YouTube or Instagram a lot, but you want to remember to be able to like pop in and see what's going on and see what you've missed, it'll just give you those reminders so you can, you know, go ahead and check those things out. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.